LaTosha, let's talk about turnout. We've already seen a ton of voters come out in early voting. There was a lot of worry about Georgia with the new voting laws. What can you tell us about who's showing up?
I think there are a couple of things. Yes, it has been an extraordinary turnout. There's been over 845,000 voters who have turned out to vote. What we see in the voting share, when you look at Black voters, women have been 65% of that number. Men have been 39%, 38%. But I think what is really something for us to pay attention to is young voters. Young voters are simply not inspired at this moment, particularly young Black voters. There are less than 2.6% of Black voters are between the ages of 18 and 24, and 3.9% between the ages of 25 and 34 that are coming out. And so I think where the Democrats are really going to have to inspire going into this election cycle after the primary is going to be young voters. We're going to have a message of deliverance for young voters. What we also see, though, is that, we have to make sure that we're shifting this narrative that Black voters are coming out. That means that the voter suppression that happened, that wasn't effective. No, what it means is that there's a lot of resources and people power that's being expended to make sure that we're getting people out to vote. What we find on the ground when we're talking to voters, there's a lot of anxiety about voting. What we see is even mail-in voting it's been down. And so there is a level right now that the voter suppression that has been happening, as those of us said from the beginning, that it is having an impact on certain voters in this state.
What do you think is the number one issue for Democrats? Are they being inspired to get out there because of the imminent probable overturning of Roe v. Wade?
I think that is going to have a particular kind of way of mobilizing voters, particularly young women voters. I think that there's a lot of concern around Roe v. Wade, but I think that people are really concerned when we're talking to folks. Folks are concerned with the same things they were concerned for when we talked to them in the 2020 election. They want criminal justice reform, but they want economic justice as well. And so what we're seeing, there's a lot of economic anxiety in this moment right now with Black voters. There's a lot of concern around having criminal justice reform, and there's a lot of concern around voting rights. As we see some of the same areas of what people voted for, what they want is they want a message that those things are going to be delivered upon.
Do they feel like they are? How do they feel about Joe Biden? Do they feel inspired to get out there for this midterm?
I think that you have some mixed reviews. I think that there are people who certainly understand. Let me say this. I don't think that this election is just going to be about Joe Biden. It doesn't matter how many commercials that the Republicans try to create. The bottom line is we also see the racist tropes that the Republicans have been using. The voter suppression, which I think that they went way too far, has actually been turning voters out, particularly older voters. That's why you see such a high number of voters over the age of 65 participating in this election cycle. And so I think that is a matter of not just an issue of there is some concern around the Democrats and the Democrats' ability to deliver for young voters and for Black voters in the state. But I also think that there is a glaring concern around how the Republicans have literally tried to dismantle and marginalize Black voters and dismantle democracy in this state.
LaTosha, thank you so much. And Elise, thank you as well.